Hi everyone, welcome back to Books, Tea and Biscuits for this long-awaited video. We've got lots to show you in this video and the one coming up. So what this video is going to be is our wrap-up of the February reads for 2024. I think we've got 3 each, haven't we? I've got 3. Yeah. I'm going to kick off with a book that I read on my iPad, and then Joe's going to go and then we'll take it in turns. So, the first book I read on my iPad, actually I just wanted to profess that this month I haven't actually picked up a physical book. There's been 2 audiobooks and 1 ebook, because the next month and the month after that is going to be really busy for physical books. I think I've got 20 books in total to show you that's coming up, and Joe's got about 100 anyway, so and half of the ones that Joe's shown you I've given her, so they're mainly all on here are mine, apart from like 2. So anyway, let's just get into the review. So the first review is going to be for None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, and I read it as an ebook from Kobo, because I've got the app on my iPad, so I just read it that way. I didn't then have to go and buy another paper copy of the book. So this book is a thriller, mystery, and like a psychological thriller, without giving the plot away too much, it's about a woman that she's in a club, not a club but like a restaurant, celebrating her 45th birthday, and in that club she becomes obsessed with this woman called Alex, and she finds out that Alex is having her 45th birthday too, so she calls them something called their birthday twins, because they're celebrating their birthday on the same day and they're the same age, and it transpires that they're born in the same hospital as well. Alex is a podcaster, and I think her name's Nora. What's her name? If it's not Nora, I'll put it here. But the lady that becomes obsessed finds out that Alex is a podcaster, and she listens to all of her podcast episodes, and the podcast is about like ladies that, you know, could be divorced, they could be starting a new life, they could have suffered death or suffered some kind of illness, anything about, you know, moving forward and starting a new life. But this woman, I can't for the life of me remember her name. Joyce. Josie Fair. So Josie is a lady that becomes obsessed with Alex, and Josie convinces Alex to tell her story. Now, when I say becomes obsessed, I mean she meets her at the school gate, even though her children are older than Alex's children.
So is she like a stalker?
Yeah, I got that. Josie becomes a stalker of Alex. Like, she always somehow ends up at her house. But when she's at her house doing the podcast, because the podcast studio is down the garden, basically in the shed, she's turned into a podcast studio. But when she's at the house, she takes an item, whether it's just like a coffee pod or the hand wash that Alex uses, a photograph of her children, a bracelet that her husband brought her for her 45th birthday. And she does this because she wants to feel closer to Alex, because she becomes obsessed. And then Alex and her husband invite Josie and her husband to dinner, because Josie's been telling Alex this story, and you don't know if it's true or not, that Josie met her husband when she was 14 years old and he was 43. This is what Josie's saying, that she's 43, he was 43, and it was actually her mum's boyfriend, and her mum's the one that brought him into her life, and then she fell for him and ran off with him, and he like controlled her, and they had 2 kids together. Her one daughter was that traumatised by life that she could only eat baby food, she couldn't eat solid food or anything, and she lived in her bedroom. She was this famous gamer on YouTube, or on Twitch or something like that. I can't remember what they had to change the name of the streaming platform. And her other daughter, Roxy, was was made to look like she was violent, that she'd punched all these people in the face, that she'd killed somebody, that she'd run away from home. And then we get another story that Josie's the one that's psychotic and controlling the husband and the family, not the dad.
Right. And going on how she is with this woman, Alex, it's like single white female with Bridget Fonda, isn't it?
Yeah, and without giving to, because I can't tell the end without saying what happens, but something happens. Josie and Alex fall out.
Right.
Okay, because Josie, after the dinner, Josie comes back about 3 o'clock in the morning, and she's all cut up, she's got blood on her face, and she says that her husband, she finally stood up to her husband and he beat her up. And Alex makes every attempt, you know, she helps her, she invites her in, says she can stay overnight. She ends up staying there a week and she won't go home, she won't leave. Alex makes every attempt to say, I'll come with you to the house, we can discuss it with your husband, sort this out. And Josie keeps going, no, no, no. She throws curveballs in the way. And then Alex says, you need to go, my sisters are coming, there's no room for you to stay here. And Josie goes looking around the house for like spare rooms and things. She goes, well, there was a bed in used to be, I could stay there. And it's because they don't want her there in the house. She's weird, she looks weird, she's got these big bulging eyes, these long black hair. The way she's described to me, she looks like a witch. What are you looking like that for?
Witches do not look like that. That is all media hype and rubbish.
I know that, that's what I'm saying. And they don't want Josie there, and she ends up going. But, so just backtracking onto Alex's husband now, every time he says to Alex he's going out, he goes, yeah, I'll be back by 10 o'clock, I'll only have 2 drinks. And then he stays out all night, he's becoming an alcoholic. Josie doesn't like that, and she says, you need to tell him. She's kind of getting in the way of their relationship. And she does something really, really bad, and she ends up kidnapping Alex's husband, and then something happens, and then Josie goes on the run, and it turns out that, like, Josie was lying about her husband and her family, and the title is None of This Is True. Is any of it true? And later on, it's a few years later, sorry, a couple of months later, and Josie's on the bus touching the bumblebee necklace that Alex lost. And Joe, you need to read the book. It's psychologically like...
It's like Single White Female.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that film?
No, I don't want to.
It's like that. It's good.
But yeah, Josie's like tugging at Alex's heartstrings at every opportunity she gets, saying that, you know, she's a stay-at-home mom, she's a controlled woman, she's a beaten woman. But her stories to me always seem a bit far-fetched, and are they true? But because it's in a podcast and she's told us all these secrets of her life, until like the last 10% of the book, you don't feel, you feel sorry for her, you don't in the last 10% of the book, and then you think, God, what's going to happen now? And then like after one page of a little bit of information, the story ends. It makes you feel like there might be a number 2, but I don't know, because at the end she's just on the bus, and you know, she's thinking about life. Am I going to get found out? And she's wearing one of the items she's taken from Alex. And I'm like, wow, that's weird. So I give the book 4.5 stars out of 5. It was almost a 5, but for me, I just feel that the subject matter of the book around the young, basically a child falling in love with a fully grown man, and nobody intervening with that. It's a bit of a, even though it did mention trigger warnings, it's a little bit of not a sore subject, but I'd rather have it been a bit more lighter and not so heavy on that subject. But for that reason, yeah.
Or that at least something could have happened to him. You know, people would have done something, you'd have thought.
Yeah, but it's not until like the last 10% of the book, when the story's actually unfolding, that you find out that some of what she said is true, but not all of it. So then, you know, that's why I give it 4.5 stars, because the first bit of the book is very heavily on that subject about her being young.
Yeah.
And then it's not till the last 10% of the book when you find out the truth. So that's why I give it 4.5 stars, because I'd rather have not have listen to that little bit, but then it turned because okay, it falls a little bit. But yeah, I liked it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see if she does anything else like this. But I really like Lisa Jewell anyway, and I know I've got At Home the Family Upstairs, which is really good. So yeah, I can't wait to read another Lisa Jewell book. So yeah, 4.5 stars from me. Let me just want to show you that I have actually wrote it in here. I haven't wrote any notes on it yet, but I've given it, what number of books did I give it in here? 1 second guys, sorry, I'm just putting up the notes. Yeah, so I gave it, because it goes from 1 to 10 book wise, I gave it 9 out of 10, which is 4.5 out of 5. And I read it via e-reader format. So yeah, I really liked it. The character building for Lisa Jewell is good anyway. The story building's really good. I think sometimes her subject matters are a bit touch and go. A bit to the tooth, do you know what I mean? But yeah, I really liked that one, so 4.5 stars from me.
Oh, good. My first book is called Lie Sleeping. It's a sci-fi thriller. It's by Ben Aaronovich. Got it from the library, as I got all my books for last month. Now, the subject matter that we did for February was relationships of all kinds, romance, relationships, criminals, and relationships to, as you'll find out, forensics and criminals and stuff like that. So it's all to do with relationships, including a stalker, a friend who becomes a stalker. This is Lie Sleeping by Ben Aaronovich. It is a series of books, and this was the last book in the series, but I haven't read the rest, but you could read this as a standalone book. It's basically a professor taught some students who belong to a club all about magic and taught them magic, and some students became really good at it and sort of become a murderer stroke crime lord. And there's a department in the Metropolitan Police that deal with magic, because some of the police are able to do magic. You've got an inspector who's very adept at it, and you've got a sergeant who sort of seems to be a natural at it, and he's with people like his girlfriend. She's really a river. Yeah, it's very surreal, but it's very good. And you've got this crime lord stroke murderer who finds ways of other people carrying out his dirty work, but him being there, he'll either talk them into it or do some sort of magic. And there's some murders that have occurred, and obviously they're investigating them. And this police sergeant gets kidnapped by this guy, and he's taken to this place in London. It's sort of set in nowadays, and he's taken to this place in London, and he's trying to work out where he is. And a policewoman, well, she used to be a policewoman, she became a baddie because she was working for this guy. And he's sort of trying to get her help to catch him. And she'll bring him food at certain times of the day, and he's looking at the packaging to see if he can work out where he is. And there's a young woman there who doesn't talk, and she's like a nymph, and she's an artist, and she doesn't talk to him. She'll give him food, and she has to sleep down there, and he realises what her magic is. And also she's got family, and one of the family that she thought was dead works as a cook at the police station, and he sort of lets her know this, so she comes on his side to help. And it's all very intricate and strange, because the chappie that is they don't give him a name, really. He's the faceless one.
Yeah.
Well, faceless 2, because the original faceless one died, so he's the faceless 2, the bad guy. He wants to get King Arthur. He wants to bring King Arthur to life and have Merlin as well. And the police officer keeps saying to him, he didn't exist. The Excalibur didn't exist. And this chap won't have it. He's determined to create from whatever magic, but it's evil, bad magic.
Yeah.
They do manage to kill him. But the ending is very strange as well. So I won't tell you the ending.
Okay.
It's a complicated book at times. And you're thinking, where are we with this? I did enjoy reading it, and I was not having a good time, so I kept putting the book down because it took me a while, and it's not a very thick book, but it took me a while to read it because I wasn't in a book reading place. I've got to say, the description of the magic in the book is done in such a way that it's almost like the magic in Harry Potter. Certain things that they do, even though it's not what they do in the Harry Potter series, you think, oh, they could actually get away with doing that, the way they do things. It's quite good, actually. They're very different to the Harry Potter, the spells are. What is similar is the fact that they have human and goddesses, of a riven nymph and a couple. It's a very complex story, and it evolves around the creation of Punch as well, you know, Punch and Judy?
Yeah.
Well, Punch. I know. And King Arthur and Merlin. I did love reading the action scenes in it. They're very well explained. I can't say what the ending was, but because of the ending, I can only give it 4.
Okay, you didn't know the ending then?
I didn't.
Oh my god, a book you haven't given 5?
I know.
Usually she's good at giving 5 stars.
The protagonist, there's several protagonists. The lead one is Inspector Nightingale, and he's very magical. And there's a trainee, a policewoman called Galeed, and Martin Chorley's the bad guy who's known as the faceless one, and Leslie, no idea whose side she's on. She's the policewoman who's sort of changed sides, but you're not really sure because of the way she is. And Foxglove is the nymph that helps him in the end because one of her family works at the police station. And Peter Grant is the police officer. And Beverly is his lady, but she's a river. It's quite good, as I say, but I only gave it 4 because the ending annoyed me. Yeah, it did annoy me, the ending. But he is good, and I did enjoy reading it, and the way he did the story, even though you know it's part of a series, you could read it as a standalone book, which was good.
It's the Rivers of London series, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Cool.
Because that was just mentioned in passing. So, yeah.
So 4 stars?
4 stars.
Okay. So the next book for me, let me just get the other, because I can't pronounce his name sometimes. 1 second. It was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This was one of the books that I listened to as an audiobook, like on the way to work and back home, and when I was driving and things like that. And because I work 5 days a week, sometimes it's easier for me to listen to them as an audiobook. Now this book made me cry at the end. Yeah, it made me cry because it was sad. It did take a lot of storytelling to get there, to build the world as well. But at the end, with what happens, if you've read it, you'll know what happens. So basically, it's in the name, Before the Coffee Gets Cold. So it's about time travel. So there's this cafe, and if you sit in one particular space, one particular spot in the cafe, that when you sit there, the hostesses and waiters know that you need to go back to the past to speak to somebody. but you have to return before the coffee gets cold, because if you don't, you get trapped in that world and you become a ghost, and then you have to sit in that spot. And the only way people can sit in that chair, because you're always sat in there, the only way they can sit in that is when you go to the toilet, because then it's empty. But until then, you're always sat in that chair because you're the ghost. Okay? So, what happens is there are some people that find out about this cafe where you can travel back in time, but what you do in the past cannot change the future. It won't change anyway. So some people want to go back and stop there, partly from going to America to see their to see their wife, because one of the characters is got dementia and he's forgetting who his wife is. So he knows he wants to go back there, but every opportunity he seems to miss the opportunity. It turns out in the end you can go to the future as well, because one of the characters, Kazu, gets pregnant, I think. Yeah, Kazu gets pregnant, but she's really poorly from the pregnancy, and she knows that she's going to die if she gives birth to this child. So she goes to the future to see her daughter, and when she's there, it takes a while for the daughter to speak to her because she's a little bit scared, doesn't know what to say. She starts crying. Obviously, I started crying because of the way that he builds up the story, the author, and you get to learn these. You get to learn the past and the future of these characters, and it's so heartwarming and so heartbreaking that you know she's not going to be there to see her child. And one of the characters as well, she's hiding from her sister because she doesn't want to go home and be part of the family business. So her parents run an inn, and she doesn't want to just live like that all her life. So she hasn't been home for 15 years, and once a year or once every couple of years her younger sister comes to where they are in Tokyo, I believe, and to see her, to try and get her to come home. And the very last time she comes, she's hiding from her, and the sister's she has coffee she's waiting for, she doesn't turn up. So she passes the cafe on this letter, say, pass to my sister. And then on the way home, her sister gets into a car accident and dies, and she regrets never speaking to the sister again. So she wants to go back to the past to speak to the sister. And obviously when they walk into the cafe, you can't get up off the chair because something will happen. You'll get forced back down. It's like a force that overcomes you.
But you can only get up if you've got to go.
No, you can't move off the chair at all. The only way you can get up is if you become the ghost. So if you get stuck, if you don't return to the world, the present, before the coffee gets cold. So you have to drink the cup of coffee before it gets cold.
Right.
If you don't drink all of that, you have to stay in the as a ghost. So you die basically, and you're a ghost in that chair. And the only way I can sit in that chair and go back to the past is when you go to the toilet.
That's what I mean. So you can get up, but only if you go into the toilet. Ghost. Oh
yeah, the ghost. Yeah. But if what happens is somebody wants to return to the past, but they don't want to wait because you don't know when the ghost is going to go to the toilet. So someone tries to force the ghost out of the chair, but she'll put.
So when the ghost gets up, I'm the ghost. I get up. I go. You sit down because you want to go back to the past. You don't physically go back to the past. You're sat in the chair, and you're drinking your coffee. So how do you get to where you want to go if you're not allowed to get out?
So what happens, it's basically like a Japanese tea ceremony. So it has to be delivered to you in a special cup using a special teapot. And it's like really thick black coffee. When they do the ceremony and pour it, when that goes onto your table and the coffee cup's full, the world, to me, like if I was going back to the past, it's like it vaporises, and then when it's like you're looking at it again sharply, you're in the past. So I could be going back 10 years later or anything. So you'd be able to see me in the present world, but I'd be like a statue. I wouldn't be moving or anything. No. But in my mind, all I can see is the past because it's vaporised.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like in the steam of the coffee, everything moulds, goes into one. Have I explained that enough?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then it's really heartbreaking because throughout the book, I think there's 3 or 4 people that go back to the past, and each story is a little bit different. But the last one is the one that really affects you the most because of what happens and, you know, the whole relationship there. I really loved it, and I actually give the book 5 out of 5. I recommend that you read it. And from my understanding, it's one of 4 books in that series. So I believe there's Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe, which is similar vein to that one. It's still part of the cafe, and I can't remember the name of the other 2, but it's like a lime, like a minty green book. Then the second one's yellow, and then it's dark blue, and then it's pink. So it's one of 4 stories. I don't know if he's going to write anymore. But yeah, I really can't wait to read the second book, and I plan on reading it either for March or April after I've read what we're about to show you in the next video. It could be Christmas at this rate, the way we're going. But yeah, I hope I explained that. I really liked the book. I give it 5 out of 5. And when you're listening to it, because of the author was so good, like they used a Japanese author, Korean author, sorry, forgive me if I've got the nationality wrong, but they use a native author,
somebody who's of that country,
of that,
to do the story.
Yeah, and it's her emotions and you know, the way she tells the story, and even the pronunciation of the words, because she knows how to pronounce them. It's really like heartwarming because it's so much emotion in it. But yeah, I really recommend that you read the book, or even if you've got it on audiobook, listen to it. If you can go to a library and borrow audiobooks, I believe. So obviously I bought mine because I've got a subscription to Audible anyway, so my credits are $7.99 a month, so I pay for mine. I didn't know at that point you could borrow audiobooks on an app from the library. I know now, so I won't be paying $7.99 again. But again, you can't always guarantee what the library've got in as an audiobook. But yes, 5 stars out of 5 for me. Good. From for Where the Coffee Gets Cold. Sorry, Before the Coffee Gets Cold. And I can't wait to read the second one.
Good.
What was your second book, Jo?
My second book was a tome. It was 501 pages.
Yeah.
And it's called Forensics, The Anatomy of Crime by Val McDermid.
Yeah.
But this was true. It wasn't a murder story. This was all true crimes. And it was telling you about the forensics, the main forensics used to deal with that particular crime. Although there's lots of things involved in the forensics, this was like the first time fingerprints were used, and you were told about that. It was a gentleman in France who developed the fingerprints because he had this belief. Well, actually, yeah, it was. He had this belief that wherever you go, wherever you've been, you leave something of yourself in that room.
Yeah.
But forensics started back in the, I think it was the 12th century, 13th century, when somebody had been murdered, and it was in Japan. And the, whatever, want of a better word, policeman, but obviously they weren't called that, was investigating, and this person had been stabbed by a scythe.
Yeah.
So what he did was he got all these farmers to bring their scythes out and hold them up. And this one guy, you know, he was going along, and all these flies went to this one scythe. And there was no blood on it, but the flies could smell the blood, so they knew he'd done the murder. Wow. And that was fact. That is in a book that the guy, the Japanese chap he wrote this book, and he put that story in there. But all these stories were real crimes, and how each forensic helped or made a boo-boo in respect that's the people, because at the end of the day, forensics are dealt with by humans.
Yeah.
And if you've got somebody who's getting a bit of an ego, whatever he says goes. And because he's very good at explaining to the jury, Sir Bernard Spilsbury's who I'm on about, and he got some things wrong, and people who were innocent, went to the gallows.
Yeah.
Or ended up with life in prison, because he would not deviate from what he'd said. He would not say, oh, that is a possibility. It was like, I'm right, you lot are wrong. So you got how fingerprints help catch the first burglars, and you got back in 81, 91, something like that. 2 police officers were shot. The one, she'd only come out of training about 9 months. She'd been, and they were just about to finish their shift. They got half an hour to go, and there was an alarm, silent alarm had been pressed, so they were nearest. They were told to take the call, and they got out of the car, and they ended up walking into 3 armed men, and one of them shot the young girl point blank range. But even though it happened in one place, because of where they'd gone and everything, there were several areas that were checked with forensics, and it was explained how they did all that. The first time, we all know the very first person that was caught through DNA was Colin Pitchfork. I know recently it was announced that he may be allowed out. But it was on about that, how he was caught. We all know how he was caught. He was a guy he'd asked or paid £200 to do his DNA test, because he claimed he'd been done for speeding or something, and he was going to lose his licence or something. So, the guy did it for him, and he was boasting about it in a pub. And apart from there being, you hear conflicting stories, but in the Val McDermid book, she says that it was the barmaid overheard, and she was worried and concerned, so she reported it to an off-duty policeman. And they then went and got his DNA and found out it was him. It tells you also about forensic psychology as well. It goes through all the different forms of forensics that help catch people, from the entomology. Some people, just don't understand how entomology works. You've got loads of different blowflies. Some will go on the body within 2 days. You've got some that will take 7 days, and it depends when they lay their eggs, and that's how they're able to work out approximately how long somebody's been dead for. Also, they have to take the ambient moisture in that if someone's been put in an electric blanket or the heating's been turned up to try and fall. So there's a lot involved in that, and there's one forensic scientist who deals with who does postmortems, or autopsies and that. She was asked. She was a friend of somebody, and this young girl had told a teacher that, and she told her mum as well, that her stepdad, was sexually abusing her. He was coming into her room at night, and her mum wouldn't believe it. And she went to the police, and this one police officer asked this woman if she could, look, because the young girl was determined to prove it. So she got one of these secret cameras and put it in her room. Yeah. But when the police viewed it, they couldn't see the person's face. All they could see was hairy legs. They couldn't see, even when the person when he turned to a side, they couldn't really get a clear view. But the pathologist noticed that there was, his veins were a certain way on his arm. So the one arm was different to the other. Everybody's is. But she forgot to take a picture of the other arm to prove it. But she took a still of his arm, the way his veins were on his arm, and compared it to his actual arm. But his defence attorney said, yeah, but how do you know it's his? You've got nothing to compare it to. And she realised where she fell down, so she thought, I'm not going to do this again. I will make sure that I don't make this mistake again. So even though he sort of got off, it helped her, you know, make sure that never happened again with anybody. Also, you've heard of double jeopardy. That don't happen anymore. If there is new evidence that can prove it, they can get done again for it. So when she got the evidence, he was done.
Good.
When she got the other evidence. So it's a good book, and it runs through all the different types of forensics that people look at, and each case focuses on all the forensics, but always one specific type, either the blood and the DNA, the bones, you know, how many bones you got, telling who's who, arson, how they work out with arson and everything. It really is an informative book, and you do get actual case histories mentioned and how they were caught or how they got off. Obviously, we all know the first person who was caught via radio was Dr. Crippen. So, you know, it tells you the first who got done for each thing and how that's helped ever since. But it also tells you the complexities of the courtroom. I started reading it the 26th of February.
Yeah.
And it was early evening. And I finished it on the 28th of February.
2 days.
Early morning. The early hours of the morning. Because it was such a good book.
Not even 48 hours.
No. I really wanted to finish it. It was so good. And I was thinking, well, you know, because you see in the index each forensic thing that they're going to be talking about. And she's interviewed people, and she mentions the interviews, and you hear all about it and everything, their take on things. But the court cases as well, and how they play an important part in it, obviously, and the conclusions. So I really found it good, and I would definitely read it again. And if I could give it more than 5, I would. I mean, I do like Val McDermid. She's very, very good anyway. But she normally writes, you know, the detective, the psychological thriller things. But this is true crime. It's lots of different cases and how they were solved or how they lost out. And really, really good. I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did.
My third book, I'm just going to get the dates up. It's one that I listened to again, because obviously my way up into and from work. And I started reading, well, it is reading, but I was listening
I know what you mean.
I started reading it on the 20th of February and finished it on the 29th of February in the morning. So it did take 9 days, but the book is 11.5 hours long. So it's only a 35-minute journey to and from work.
So you can only listen to it when you're not
at
work.
I don't listen to audiobooks at home. I'll always try and read at home, but when I'm driving, so it took about 9 days. And the book is The Bullet That Missed, and that is book 3 in the Thursday Murder Club series. This is one of my favourite ever series, and this book, even though it is about, obviously, the Thursday Murder Club, it's still about friendship, because
how they interact with
there's
each other.
4 old people, say old, they're in the 70s and 80s.
Old then.
Yeah, I didn't want to be offensive or anything.
No, it's not offensive.
But it's their relationship as well, because they're all friends, but they all have their own little bit to play in the Thursday Murder Club. So you've got Elizabeth, who used to be the MI5 or MI6 agent. You've got Joyce, who used to be a nurse, and she helps. Joyce is very logical, and she thinks differently to other people because of her experience with bodies and stuff.
But of course that would come in handy anyway as well, wouldn't it, because of forensics. Yeah,
and then you've got Ron, who used to be a boxer, I think he's a little bit of a semi-famous celebrity, but he apparently is very attractive, and he's very, very nice and kind. And then you've got Ibrahim. He is Ron's best friend, and he is a psychologist, psychotherapist, however you want to.
So you've got everybody that has some sort of
professional
novel knowledge of certain things to do with murder.
And it's not just that as well, it's about their friend who's not part of the Thursday Murder Club, but he's I don't want to say tag along, but he's become their friend, and he just used to be a handyman, and the understanding was he wasn't actually meant to be in the book this much, but because everyone liked him from the first book, he's now a main protagonist, and that is Bogdan, really tall, really heavily built Polish worker. And what this one's about is about more to do with Elizabeth. So someone is blackmailing Elizabeth to kill her friend. If she doesn't kill her friend, then either her or Joyce is going to get killed. Joyce is Elizabeth's best friend and part of one of the.
So what they're saying is, if you don't kill her, we might kill her as well as you.
And they call the blackmailer the Viking, and it's about, obviously, Elizabeth and her husband gets kidnapped. Now Elizabeth's husband Stephen, he's got dementia, and what happens is when they get kidnapped, they don't know where they've been taken because they get blindfolded. When their blindfold comes off, they're sat in like a library, and there's these limited edition, first edition, really expensive books on the shelf, and Stephen's eyes are, while Elizabeth's doing the talking to this guy, his eyes are just scanning the room, and he's like looking at the books and memorising what's there, because he knows that they're expensive and only collectors would have them. They're then type of books, like first edition of Wind in the Willows.
But isn't there a worry there with him having dementia that he would forget?
No. And I'll get to that point in a second.
Oh, exciting.
Because he's got dementia, but it's not like aggressive yet. It's in the early stages.
Oh, okay.
And Stephen is really close with Bogdan because, like, let's say Elizabeth has to go out on a day out, she'll ask Bogdan to sit with Stephen and they sit down and play chess. That's one thing he hasn't forgotten yet, is how to play chess. And even though Bogdan's really good at chess, sometimes he mainly lets Stephen win, because Stephen's really good at chess as well. So they're in this library, and Stephen notices these books, and obviously, like, one of the books is the first edition, Wind in the Willows with the dust jacket. And, you know, he memorises, he makes a mental note of it. Elizabeth is, you know, given the ultimatum, kill or be killed, or we're going to kill your friend. And so she goes to this person's house and pretends to kill him, but Joyce doesn't know that she's pretending to kill him. All Joyce knows is that Elizabeth has shot the gun. It's not until, obviously, because obviously Elizabeth's being tracked through her phone, it's not until Elizabeth tells Joyce to make certain phone calls, send people certain messages, then take the SIM card out and throw the phone away, so it's not being used anymore, that Elizabeth then tells Joyce this full story about, he's not really dead, I've had to pretend. And now that my phone can't be tracked, I can throw it away and somebody will come in. Anyway, it gets to the point where the Viking, who's the person that is giving Elizabeth the ultimatum, finds out that he's not really dead. And what happens is they're investigating, also, aside from that, they're investigating a journalist murder called Bethany Waits, who died 10 years ago, and they're trying to piece together that as part of the Thursday Murder Club. And then Elizabeth's got her own debacle going on with the ultimatum and the blackmail. And Ron gets a girlfriend who's part of the TV show to do with Bethany Waits, where she was working, and things like that, and she knows things and she confides in Ron, but not until almost the end of the story. And then somebody in prison from the last book comes in at the beginning, and Ibrahim starts to work on her like therapy and becomes a client and things like that. And somebody in the prison who's connected to the Bethany Waits murder passes away and dies, is killed, because she's about to mention the name. And I don't want to give too much away, but the constable of Kent Constabulary is the one to blame for everything that's gone on, and he's an author, and that's the only way that they connect him to the crimes is through his books, because he wants notoriety and things like that. And then they stage his confession. And obviously it's in the library with the expensive books. Now get into what you mentioned about Stephen and how would he forget. So he memorises the books, but he's got a friend who's an antique dealer, and he goes to his friend and goes, you know, I was kidnapped, these are the books that were on the shelf, can you find out who sold them, who brought them, who they were sold to? And he comes up with the name of the person.
Brilliant.
So yeah, they know who the person is that kidnapped them, but he somehow becomes their friend, like, not their friend, but he works with them. So they almost kill him, but because he can do things that they can't, he can help with the confession, and he can help with solving Bethany Waite's murder. They work with him
But he wanted somebody to die, so...
But then he becomes nice and I find out that he actually wouldn't kill anybody. He's just all talk and no trousers. Yeah. And he's a Swedish guy and he's all talk and no trousers. He is. That's what I say. But yeah, they work with him to get this chief constable to confess to what happened 10 years ago with Bethany Waits, because she found out about the fraud and everything else. Yeah.
Ooh,
so it's really, really good.
yeah.
I was hooked. And the narrator, Fiona Shaw, who played Aunt Petunia in Harry
Yes.
Potter, she's really good.
Yes.
And she can do all the voices and the accents. But it's different because Leslie Manville narrated the first two. And Fiona Shaw narrates the next two. And from the author's notes at the end, which is the last half an hour, apparently from what I've heard there's going to be 6 in total. So there's another 2 books. If they're popular, it might extend to 12 books.
Wow.
And I know there's a film being made. And a rumour has it that it could be Julie Walters as Joyce, Helen Mirren as Elizabeth, so the MI5 agent.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But they haven't spoken about the guys yet. But from what he said, it's an all-British cast, so it's going to be really good. And I don't think anybody writes a whodunit or a murder mystery like the British. And I have to say that unbiased. No, it's not unbiased. It's probably a biased opinion because I am British, but. From obviously Agatha Christie, all the authors you've got these like Martina Cole, Linda LaPlante, even Richard Osman. Nobody writes how the British write them. This one for me, again 5 out of 5. But I love Richard Osman's books anyway. This is the 3rd one, and I've actually got the 4th one, The Last Devil to Die, as a hardback book. So I will read that as a book because it was a special edition one from Waterstone. So I will be reading that one as a book. But I'll be imagining Fiona Shaw reading it to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As I read it. But yes, I can't wait for that one. That one's meant to be really sad. I've watched people on YouTube read it and they're crying. And I'm like, oh, I'm not ready yet for that. But yes, it gets 5 big stars, golden stars from me.
Oh,
I absolutely love it, yeah.
Right.
You haven't dived into the series yet. When you do, you'll understand why.
I know. My final one, my 3rd one, is called Written in Blood by Chris Carter. This is a definite psychological
He's a good author,
thriller.
isn't he?
Yes, he is. And that was a thickish book, which I started on the 21st of February and finished on the 22nd of February. Also a library book. The protagonist in this is a detective, Robert Hunter, because there are a series of Robert Hunter books he does. And his partner is Carlos Garcia, and the captain is a female, Captain Blake. Angela Wood is a pickpocket. She ended up as a pickpocket. You don't find out till later on why she ended up as a pickpocket, but it was something she ended up doing, and she was taught how to do it by one of the best. And that's what she does. She goes round about Christmas time is her favourite season because she knows people aren't paying attention, they're going for drinks and the bags are open, or they're buying stuff and they've normally got a lot more money and that. So she knows what she normally does, because she's got a certain amount of morals, is she'll take the money, but any passes or any credit cards she'll post back to the owner, because she says, I've pinched the money, I'm not going to take the credit cards. Sometimes she has been known to sell a credit card, but not very often.
Okay.
And she only goes so much. If there's not a lot of money in them, she'll go back on the street until she gets a reasonable amount so she can pay her rent and that. So it's not really for greed that she's doing it. She's doing it to survive. And she goes into this pub. She's already picked what she's going to get because she's checked it, and she's got 600 quid, 800 quid, something like that from a couple of wallets that she's kept. And she goes and sits at this table with this drink, and there's this man on the phone. She can't see his face, he's turned away. And he's not a very nice man, because this elderly bloke comes in and asks for something, for a seat or something. And this chap on the phone is really nasty to this elderly man. And she thinks to herself, that's not nice, I'm going to get you, sort of thing. And she sees he's got this case, very nice posh case, and he's put it down by his side, so she thinks, right. She wasn't going to do it, but because he was nasty to this old man, she decided she'd get him back. So she gets up, pretends to be on the phone and walks round him. And as she's doing it, because there's like a strap on this bag, she's hooked her foot in and she's going out, gradually taking the bag with her in a way so that he wouldn't notice. Then somebody drops a tray of drinks, so everybody's attention's taken on that, so she picks it up and runs out. Because she is what she is, she normally wears a disguise, but she'd taken it off before going in the pub. But she knows where the cameras are, so she doesn't really look at the cameras. But she did make a boo-boo, and that was when she went to the bathroom. And she'd come out and there's a camera there, so it picks up her face. She gets home and she thinks, oh, you know, I'll have a look. I'll have a look. She manages to undo the case, and there's this strange scrapbook in it. And when she opens the scrapbook, she has the fright of her life, because it's a murder scrapbook.
Oh.
It's pictures of murder victims with a full description of what they look like, their height, weight, everything, where they were snatched from and what he did to them. And there's pictures of torture, there's all sorts. And there's this one picture that she notices, and it's of a little boy. He's only about 10. And she thinks, you know, she's obviously not happy about that, but she's not going to go to the police because of what she is. So she wipes the book down, the case down, and she posts it. She puts it in a forensic scientist's post box, because she doesn't live far from, well, she lives a distance from it, but not that far from it. And of course it's not been stamped because she delivered it early hours of the morning and put it in. This forensic scientist thinks, what's this? Because it's got her name on, no stamp, no address. So she has a look, she phones the police, she says, you need to come, you need to look at this. So they decide, right, they send the scrapbook off to find out if any of it's true. And they find that there's been a lot of people that have been reported missing, and it's their pictures.
Yeah.
And they think, oh my God, how did you get this? She says, they go through all this, and then they're looking, and this one picture falls out of this little boy. So they think, oh, there's something smudgy on here. So they take it away, and the fingerprints are taken, and they come up because she's been done once. So her name comes up. So the two police officers, Robert and Carlos, go to her address to go and ask her for help. And they go there, and they knock on the door, and they say it's the police. And she says, wait a minute, sort of like that. And Robert looks at Carlos and says, good out. So Carlos goes down the stairs, and he goes round the back, because there's nowhere really. She can't run down stairs outside because there aren't any. And she jumped out the window, but she jumps down, and Carlos is there. And the police officer had broken in, seen her about to jump, and said, don't, I'm not going to arrest you or anything, we just need your help. And she almost falls for it, but then thinks, no, he's lying, and she jumps out the window. In the meantime, her neighbour from next door has come along, because he heard the row and the racket and whatever. And he's a big burly biker type person. He stands there, and the police officer looks and says who he is, and he looks and he went, oh, she's jumped, but they catch her obviously because the other policeman's there, and they get her in the car, and they explain that they really don't give a monkeys about her pickpocketing. They're not bothered about that, but they need to know about the book. And they say to her, we got you from the picture of this little boy. And she's being quite, very awkward. She's not
standoffish.
Yeah, she's being nasty, and she's being funny. And as soon as they mention the little boy, she shows her vulnerable side. And it appears that when she was younger, her parents had gone out, and she was to look after a little boy. He was 10, her little brother, and he wanted some food or other. And she said, "Mum and Dad will be back soon. They'll bring some food in with them. I'm not going out in this rain." And he said, "They're not going to come back till like gone 7. It's 3 o'clock, and I'm really hungry." And she's going to have a banana. She said, "We haven't got any bananas." She said, "Well, go and have a look in the fridge." And there's nothing in the fridge. So he says, "Please," sort of thing. Anyway, she lets him go, and he doesn't come back. And his body's found so many days later, and she never forgave herself, and it broke her up. And this little boy in the picture reminded her of her brother, which is why she picked it up and forgot to wipe it. So that's why one of the fingerprints were all over it. And they ask her for help. In the meantime, the guy that's doing all the murders, he's quite savvy. He goes to the pub because he obviously finds out his case is missing, and pretends to be a policeman and says to the barman, "I need to have a look at your CCTV. Someone's reported blah blah blah," and all this. So the guy is very busy, takes him into the room to look and leaves him there. And what this chap does is takes a copy and then wipes the tapes. So he managed to get a look at her when she came out of the bathroom. So he knows what she looks like. So the police are concerned about her because they go to the pub to see if they can have a look, if she can look on the camera and then say, "Yes, that's the guy." And they realise that the tapes have been wiped. So they're worried for her. And she says, "Well, he doesn't know where I live, and there's like over 3 million people in this state, how's he going to find me?" But he's found her. He's found her. She goes home, and of course the police officer had initially kicked the door in the first time they went there, and they hadn't got it fixed yet.
Oh.
And she goes to her home to see this bloke bending down at her door, and there's something about him that worries her, and she starts to run, and it's him. And she manages to get hold of the police and that, and he kidnaps her, and the story goes on from there. It's he kidnaps the police officer as well, and it turns out this chap, when he was about 14, when he was young, he got into trouble. He'd been in Borstal and places, all that sort of thing. He'd been in trouble a lot. And the army come round to certain prisons, and they enlist young men who they are pliable, and they can teach them to kill. And that's what they do. They kill and they assassinate. And they start as young as 12 sometimes. It's 14-year-old, so he was taught how to kill. And he was taught, the only thing he wouldn't do, he was ordered to rape somebody, and he wouldn't do it. He would not do it. So that was something he would never do. That was the only good thing about him. He killed people, he killed young people, he killed babies, he'd kill anybody and everybody. And he gets hold of this police officer, and he's got 3 other people in cells where they are, including her. And he kills 2 of them. So there's 1 person left, the police officer and Angela. And he, the police officer thinks, "I've got to play for time here." And he says, because they're on about him firing, how good he is. And he says, "I could shoot better than you." He said, "But you weren't ever in the army. I was taught." He says, "I'm a police officer. I can shoot better than you." So they have this competition, but he works a fast one with the copper, and he says to him, "You're going to be handcuffed to this chair still. I will allow you your hand that you shoot with to hold the gun, but he's going to be free, he's going to be able to, you know, so he's got to be crafty. I won't tell you what he does.
Okay.
It's a brilliant story, it's really good. It is to do with the relationship of the victim, all the victims, but mostly Angela and her connection with the police, how she gets, and the reason she sent it, she knew about that forensic scientist, is she picked her pocket the year before, opened it up, realised who she was and posted it back to her. She felt guilty because it was a forensic scientist, and she saw a pass for the FBI and everything, and so she even kept the money in there. She didn't take the money, she got the whole wallet, she parcelled it up and posted it to this woman. So of course she knew her address, so she knew what she did, so that's how she managed to get it there, and that's how it all kicks off. But it's really, really good. His colleagues had killed themselves in one way or another because of what they'd all seen and gone through during the various different wars that they were in. And so he needs this book, but there's also something else in the book. So because they've got this scrapbook, they decide we're going to investigate, and they take it to this forensic chap who deals with computers, and he's able to find there's something underneath, you know, like the scrapbook, there's something like under there, so he's able to undo it and find it, and they copy it, and so he won't know, and then they decide to put a tracker in, but he knows that he finds out about the tracker. But, you know, lots of different things, and he hides the book, the police officer does, and he says, you know, he's not going to be happy. He may find the tracker, but there's certain things he won't get back, and he needs them back. So they have this cat and mouse game. But it is very, very good. It's amazing. So I've got to read more Chris Carter, because the way he writes the book, there's nothing in there that you can say, oh, there's no need for that, because every bit of explanation is needed for the story. Yeah, it's brilliant. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's good. So did you give it 5 stars?
Oh God, yeah.
Well, thank you for listening to that, guys. The next video is going to be us going over a haul that we did or received for last month, because there isn't actually going to be any book reviews for March, but I will upload this video in March just to coincide with that as well, so that you're still getting content, but it won't actually be the book reviews because something's happening. We're not able to film, we can't find the time to film in March, but we will be back in April. So that's the end of this video. Please like, comment and subscribe to our Facebook, Instagram and YouTube channels. If you've got any questions on Facebook, Joe deals with that, so Joe will answer any questions on there. If you've got any questions on Instagram, I deal with that, or even our emails in the YouTube description as well. So we hope you like it. Thank you for watching and listening to us ramble on. The next video we hope you enjoy. It will be a lot shorter than this one, it's just going over a haul. We're going to describe some books to you. We're going to explain how we acquired these books, but we're not going to go into detail as to what they're about until we've actually read them. Okay, so that'll be probably in 12 months time, but yes, we hope you like this video. Thank you guys and take care. Bye. Bye.